Reebok just made a move that changes everything about the DiJonai Carrington controversy.
Is here, Reebok is reportedly dropping their endorsement for DiJonai Carrington after she attacked Sophie Cunningham.
DiJonai Carrington is no longer with Reebok, and the athlete stepping into that spotlight is Sophie Cunningham. Yes, Sophie Cunningham, the same Sophie Cunningham who's been at the center of Carrington's most talked about incident. That's what makes this so wild. If Reebok had simply moved on from Carrington and left the spot open, that would already be a story. But they didn't just move on, they moved towards Sophie Cunningham. And that's what turns this from a basketball controversy into something else entirely.
That's what I like to see. Pockets getting hit hard, bro. Hard. Because somebody need to hold these players accountable for the stupidity they have been putting out.
An endorsement deal, a brand image, real money, and the fallout from everything that happened between these two players. The deeper you go into what happened, the harder it gets to see the Reebok decision as some random business move. It starts with the foul. Cunningham was attacking in transition when Carrington came across and made heavy contact.
Oh, DiJonai, you hit her in the head and you drew blood. It was a flagrant 2. You should have been ejected.
There was a windup, there was follow-through, and Cunningham was airborne and vulnerable when it happened. The officials reviewed it, the call was upgraded, flagrant 2, Carrington was ejected. At that point, most people probably figured the story was simple. A hard foul, a controversial play, an ejection, maybe a suspension discussion. Then everyone moves on to the next game, except that's not what happened, because people started pulling up the footage, and suddenly this wasn't about one play anymore. Another clip surfaced, then another. One showed Carrington making contact near Cunningham's face while reaching for the ball. Now people weren't asking whether one foul was too hard, they were asking whether there was a pattern. That's a completely different conversation. Physical play is normal in basketball, but when the same matchup keeps producing controversial moments, people start looking closer, and Cunningham kept ending up on the other side of them. Fans reposted clips, commentators broke down the plays, and soon people who hadn't even watched the original game were seeing slow motion footage everywhere.
Cunningham in a vulnerable position in the air. Oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, there's no question.
WNBA player DiJonai Carrington of the Chicago Sky was ejected after a flagrant 2 foul.
Then came the post that changed everything. White privilege. Carrington posted the phrase mid-controversy, and nobody had a clear answer for what she meant.
It's a vague critique that has no relevance to what transpired. There was nothing about what transpired that had anything to do with white privilege. It's really that simple, right?
Now the foul, Cunningham, something else. She later tried to clarify it wasn't about the foul the way people assumed, but by then, the conversation had already run away from her. That's where it got dangerous for an athlete with a major brand behind her. A player can survive disagreement over a foul call. An endorsement company can't survive its athlete becoming the story instead of the sport. Reebok had a decision: stay or walk away. They walked away, and the twist nobody could have scripted. The person stepping into that spot is Sophie Cunningham, the same player at the center of the controversy that got Carrington here in the first place. The same story that cost Carrington her deal handed Cunningham an opportunity. The question has changed. It's no longer, was that foul too hard? It's, did Carrington's handling of the controversy cost her a major endorsement? An ejection lasts a night. Losing a brand relationship follows you, and other companies are watching. Then came the biggest development. Reebok made the switch. Carrington's out, Cunningham's in. One real question remains. Was the foul itself the reason, or just the moment that exposed a bigger problem? Trace it back. The foul, the other clips, the backlash, the white privilege post, the fallout, the calls for accountability, and finally, Reebok. That's an escalation, and the one who paid for it wasn't Cunningham. It was Carrington. We're not even at the most interesting part yet, because now that Cunningham has the deal, the real question is what this means for Carrington next, and whether this is the end of the fallout or just the beginning. Losing Reebok isn't just about losing a logo on a shoe. It's about what happens when other brands look at the same situation and start asking themselves if they want to take that risk. That's how endorsement careers work. One deal disappears, and suddenly every other company has a reason to take a second look. Carrington doesn't have to like that reality for it to be true. The basketball side of this can still change. She can go out, play well, string together a strong stretch, and remind everyone why she was valuable in the first place. That's the simplest way to change a sports narrative. You don't argue with it, you play through it. But the business side moves differently. A brand doesn't have to wait for the next game. It can decide immediately. Reebok already did. That's why the Cunningham piece matters so much. She isn't receiving some unrelated opportunity. She's stepping directly into the space Carrington left behind. So every time people see her associated with Reebok, there's another layer to the story. They'll remember how she got connected to this in the first place. That's not necessarily something Cunningham asked for. She didn't create the situation, and she didn't decide to end Carrington's deal, but she's the one benefiting from it. That's one of the strangest twists in the whole story. Think about where these two players were before any of this. Just competitors playing basketball. One controversial matchup led to another. Then social media got involved. Then the commentators. Then the brands, and suddenly one player has lost an endorsement while the other has gained one. That's a completely different level of consequence, and it's exactly why this story has traveled as far as it has. People love a sports rivalry. They pay even closer attention when that rivalry appears to have consequences off the court. There's another reason this could stay difficult for Carrington. The public doesn't usually remember the full timeline. They remember the moment, the clip, the headline, the name. Months from now, someone might not recall every detail of what happened between these two players. They'll just remember, that's the player who got caught up in that huge controversy. That's the problem with viral moments. They don't need the full story to become part of someone's public image, which is why Carrington's next move matters. If she wants to change the narrative, the answer probably isn't another online exchange, another explanation, another attempt to convince every critic they misread her. The simplest way to change people's minds is to give them something else to talk about. Play, produce, win. Let the basketball become the headline again, because right now basketball isn't the only thing people are talking about, and that's exactly what some players around the league have voiced frustration over. There's been a broader conversation about how much attention the WNBA's off-court drama pulls compared to the actual games, with players pointing out that there's so much good basketball happening that the noise sometimes drowns it out. Carrington is still a basketball player. Her career didn't end because one endorsement did. She's still capable of changing the conversation. She just has to do it on the court. Which brings it back to Cunningham. She now has something Carrington doesn't. A fresh business opportunity born out of one of the most controversial stretches of the season. That's a real win for her. And like it or not, brands are always looking for athletes who connect with an audience. Cunningham already has the personality that gets people talking. Recognizable, outspoken. And now she has another major brand attached to her name. So while Carrington works to move past this chapter, Cunningham may be opening a new one. That's the irony at the center of all this. A controversy that looked like it could damage both players ended up producing two completely different outcomes, which is why this doesn't end with the Reebok announcement. The real story starts now. What does Carrington do next? Let the noise go and let her game speak. Address it head on. Wait for another brand to step in. Or does this follow her for the rest of the season? Reebok has already made its choice, and it didn't just move on, it moved towards Sophie Cunningham. So now Carrington has something to prove. Not to Reebok, not to the people arguing about her online, not even to the commentators who've spent weeks dissecting her every move. To herself, because the easy thing here would be to keep fighting the narrative. The harder thing is to make people forget it was ever the story, and there's only one way to do that. Give them something else to remember. A great game, a big defensive stretch, a winning streak, a moment that has nothing to do with Sophie Cunningham, nothing to do with Reebok, nothing to do with white privilege. Just basketball. Right now, Carrington has lost the endorsement, Cunningham has gained the opportunity, and the controversy has already traveled well beyond the court. But careers are long, and one decision doesn't have to define an athlete forever. The real question is whether Carrington can make the next chapter good enough that people stop talking about the last one. Reebok may have closed the door, but DiJonai Carrington still gets to decide what she does next. And after everything that's happened, that might be the most important part of this entire story.